This presentation is the art of the meeting, and it is in Module 6, Effective Communications. This presentation is a little bit different than others in this module, and that is focused on helping to prepare and facilitate effective meetings. This presentation has relied upon the NOAA Intro to Planning and Facilitating Effective Meetings and the EPA Getting in Step Guide for Engaging Stakeholders. Look, we all know what it's like to be in a poorly managed meeting. Hopefully with today's agenda, we'll be able to help you to improve your meetings. This presentation was originally provided in a workshop format, and as such, we began the meeting, which was virtual, with some ground rules. And why? Because that's an effective meeting practice that helps everyone to be on the same page. So we wanted interaction, so we wanted people to keep their video on, but mute their microphones during the presentation. We were looking for the use of hand signals to indicate needs or things were unclear. We used chat to participate with questions along the way, and we asked everyone to please participate fully in breakout sessions and interactive activities, and to not take phone calls or work on other materials during this session to the best of their ability. During this meeting, we introduced hand signals, which are especially helpful in virtual meetings, but they can also work in in-person meetings. If you've ever had multiple people trying to talk over each other, you can use the single finger being held up to indicate that you'd like to speak, and then wait for the facilitator to recognize you and the ordering of people in which they can speak. If you don't understand a word or an acronym, you can use the L signal to indicate the language needs to be clearer, or you can wriggle your fingers in front of your face to indicate that you're really confused. If you agree with something or you're excited, you can shake your hands back and forth in the air or wriggle your fingers. That's a way of showing silent applause. If you need to interrupt with something that's procedural or maybe a bathroom break, you can use the timeout sign. And there are other signs that you can use. You can use the slow down or speak up signs that are there. You can use your thumbs up, thumbs down. You can show a major objection, but we would hesitate to use that quite a bit. So you can do the fist or cross your hands across your chest. But these are ways that you can incorporate your increased participation in meetings without increasing interruptions. It's also great to start meetings with icebreaker activities. One that you could do is a virtual spectrum line. You can also do spectrum lines in person by requesting that people line up according to their level of agreement with various statements. In person, it gets people out of their seats and moving, and it provides some visual feedback on where people are on agreement with those issues. You can also do this virtually on your screen. So you just use your finger to show the position on your level of agreement by moving your hand up and down on the screen. You could also do this side to side if you see fit. Okay, with that introduction, let's start in on some of the things that you want to have prepared for a meeting. Particularly when you're putting together your first stakeholder meeting, you'll want to make a strong first impression. And you can do this by sending a written invitation and following up with a phone call. This shows that you are well organized and that each stakeholder is important. If individuals can't make it, ask them to send a delegate, and this indicates that you really value their organization's input. If stakeholders cannot or will not come, you can offer to keep them updated by sending them meeting notes or asking if they would be willing to reach out to receive your reaching out about input or in relevant future decisions. In this way, you can keep folks involved even if they are not willing to commit to regularly attending meetings. At the first meeting, after explaining the purpose, you should ask people to sign a group pledge to the process to make a reasonable effort to attend the stakeholder meetings. This commitment is important, and writing it down seems to make it more binding than just a voice vote. In preparing for regular meetings, there are several items that should be on your checklist. First, you should try to schedule the meeting a month out if possible, but certainly more than a week. There are multiple coordination apps that can be used to assist in meeting scheduling, such as a doodle poll. We'll cover some of the other items on this list in the following slides. You want to be sure that you define your purpose and objectives for the meeting prior to scheduling it. We've all been in meetings where there really does not seem to be a purpose, and it probably could have been better summarized in an email. You don't always need to have a meeting. Just look around the room and think about all the cost of the salaries and wages of the people attending and ask, is this really the most effective use of time? If you are calling a meeting, it needs to have a purpose. Some examples of that purpose are provided. If your purpose is information sharing, you need to be able to articulate a so that statement. In other words, we're sharing this information so that you can do something, because meetings must do something. Further, you should be able to provide a quick summary of what the concrete outputs or decisions should be. And make sure that you increase the happiness of the attendees by defining a meeting purpose that is clear and achievable. There's nothing worse than getting into a meeting and you get overwhelmed just because you can't accomplish everything that needs to be done there. Finally, list out the topics that will likely need to be addressed to reach the final outcome. For most meetings, you'll want to have an attendance sheet to pass around, but even before the meeting, you want to think about your participants. What unique backgrounds or skills do they have that you want to hear about? Do two people have different views that are likely to cause conflict and slow down progress? Be sure that you've assigned roles for the meeting. Listed are some of the common roles of meeting attendees or participants. We'll be talking more about the role of facilitator later, but sometimes, particularly for smaller meetings, the facilitator and the leader can be combined into a dual role. For large meetings, or meetings where there's a lot of interactions, you need a facilitator. You'll also want someone designated as a recorder to keep the minutes, and the others may be just general participants. That's just fine. Some other roles that are often helpful at the meeting are a meeting planner who manages all the logistics, the registration, setup, all the other duties associated with that. You might have timekeepers to help you moving through the agenda. You might have technology keepers to load presentations and troubleshoot slides or microphones. Um, you might consider designating an agitator to ask questions others are thinking but afraid to ask. Or that is, they can play the devil's advocate. There's a number of other roles that you can consider here. These just give some examples. Meetings should also have an agenda. Actually, you should have two agendas, one for the participants and one for the leaders. The one that the leaders have should have extra details in the process, whereas the participant agenda should just be a concise summary of the discussion items or objectives. The process agenda, that more full one, should have the times, activities and objectives, meeting roles, setup, and material items that you know, markers or a flip chart, that type of thing. The layout that's provided in this slide can be done in Excel or in Word, but it shows an effective way to work through the process meeting agenda item by item. On the left, you can see the time as well as the responsible people there and their roles. In the middle, you see the topic, objectives, and activities listed out. And in the right side, you see a setup and materials, how the room needs to be, and the equipment and supplies that are needed there. Large meetings will greatly benefit from a assigned planner who helps them manage the logistics. If not someone, typically the leader or the facilitator will need to think through these considerations. Location. Where will the meeting be held? Does it best suit the group and its travel requirements? Oftentimes, if you have statewide meetings, how do you encourage participation from those in the western portion of the state and the eastern portion of the state? Who's the contact person for the facility and the logistics? You need to know this, not just who's the contact person for people to contact you about the meeting, but who do you need to talk to make sure you can get into the meeting room? Equipment. Do you need wall space or a whiteboard? Do you need audio visual equipment? You need to make sure that all that travels with you or that it's there at the site. What about food and snacks? Breaks. Have you built in enough break time in the agenda? And what is the room layout arrangements? That can really make a difference in a successful meeting. The way that people arrange in the room affect their participation. And so here's some different layout styles that are pretty common. You see in the top left is a cabaret style, and this is for taking notes and group interaction, as well as interaction with the speaker, because they're facing the speaker, they have a writing surface, and they can look at each other in the face as well. The banqueting style is for small group settings or for meals. A theater style maximizes the seating with minimal note taking and participant interaction. The classroom style, the speaker is engaging with the participants with notes, and it's typically with a large seating capacity there. A U-shape is a large committee, typically with an audio-visual presentation. A boardroom setting, there's a clear leader of the meeting, and the discussion is the focus of the meeting. A cocktail setting is to allow for informal socialization and networking with some seating. And finally, you have the hollow square, in which allows for a large committee interaction. Okay, that kind of covers some of the preparing for the meeting. But once you've worked through your meeting's purpose, objective, agenda, all these preparation items, you're now ready to execute the meeting. And so let's take a look at some skills, activities, and tools that will aid in that process. So it's helpful to begin by noting that meetings, or at least meeting segments, tend to have a regular shape to the discussion. There's an opening phase in which a topic or a question is introduced, brainstorming is conducted, thoughts are clarified, and information is shared. So the question is to prompt the discussion, scope, and content. The second phase is a prioritization or reduction phase. In this step, information is summarized, similar ideas are combined, and action items are evaluated. The goal here is to narrow the choices or the data to make it more manageable. And lastly, there's a closing section or an agreement phase. This is where decisions occur, final prioritization is made, and the group reaches an agreement. The facilitator serves a key role in meetings. If a meeting leader is also serving as a facilitator, then their skills can often make or break the success of a meeting. Facilitators are meeting process and structure experts. They help move the participants through the stages of the meetings. They're not necessarily content experts. Although knowing something about the subject will help, they need to remain content neutral. Their goal is not to solve the problems or necessarily to contribute content to the discussion, but to get involvement from the participants so that they can achieve the meeting objectives. This person could be an internal group member, or you can hire a professional facilitator. Facilitators can help design the meeting so that it flows smoothly and is effective. They ask questions, guide discussions, and keep the meeting on track. They will draw out the quieter voices and tone down the outspoken ones. They will summarize points and take visible notes for the group on flip charts. And they will also help the group to arrive at decisions. Here are some of the skills of a facilitator. They need to use their body language to show that they are actively listening to content and to clarify thoughts. That helps people to know that they're really being heard and they're involved and their opinion matters. They don't need to lead the group in their opinion, but to try to show respect to all opinions and in a neutral stance. People just need to know that they're being heard. Facilitators ask questions. They paraphrase, summarize, or synthesize responsive to ensure it is properly captured. They may also use negative polls, like, does anyone not agree with that direction, to keep things moving along. When participants get sidetracked, they will label that as a sidetrack, and they will capture such ideas in a parking lot for future discussion and restate the purpose of the meeting. We'll talk more about a parking lot later. Facilitators are accurate readers of the mood of the room. They may label the low energy. Hey, I'm sensing that folks are not enthusiastic here. Do we need a short break? Or they can explain if they see confused faces and make sure that they can resolve that. Or if they see people withdrawn or unsure, they can work towards resolutions. Oftentimes by calling out, so and so. It seems like you're a little bit uncomfortable with that. They will often use flip charts to capture the group's thoughts, and finally, they will manage disruptive behaviors and personalities during the meeting. How does a facilitator do this? Well, in addition to the basic skill set that we've just talked about, they can have access to a number of tools that can be utilized to engage participants. And so we're going to explore some of these different tools in their various categories. First, we want to deal with introduction tools. It's always good to start the meeting on the right footing. And so if you have an unfamiliar audience or someone new has joined an audience, you might just want to start with going around the room, giving your name and organization, as well as one other piece of information. This could be a personal fact. It could be beating expectations. It can help some other item, or it could be some other item like a fun question to build energy. So that will sort of depend on the relationship of the group and what you're trying to build there as far as what type of question that you ask. If people already know each other, consider having everyone state something positive in their personal or professional life to build energy and excitement for the meeting. So just share one thing shortly that gets people enthusiastic. Another fun thing is speed networking. In this case, participants can have their business cards and an elevator pitch ready, and they will take about 30 seconds to introduce themselves before moving to the next person. If you have the time, you can also schedule different organizations to table, and others can come by and participate in a short Q&A session for 5 or 10 minutes or so before having all the tables and participants switch. That takes a lot of advanced planning there, but it is a tool that can be very effectively used. If you're just starting a new team, you might want to consider using a team canvas session. You can see the link there, the teamcanvas.com, that provides these templates that you can just use. You can use their templates, or you can write them on whiteboards or flip charts. But the facilitator will help the group to define their goals, their roles and skills, their values, rules, and purposes. If you get really motivated, you can add strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and risks, in what's called a SWOT analysis. You can also put personal goals as well as group goals and ask for needs and expectations. So the way you can do this, again, if you have a whiteboard, you can have people come up there and write in different colors of markers. You can have post-it notes and pens, and people can come up and post their thoughts up there, and you can just work through section by section. This can help to provide as an initial framing, a framework for the group. You can just take 5 minutes or maybe more, whatever you need for each section, and then they can post their ideas, and then you can talk through it to clarify, reduce, and synthesize those thoughts. If you're seeking to generate new ideas, there are a whole number of options. A brainstorm is great, but often people don't handle brainstorming sessions properly. Brainstorming sessions are not meant to have any censoring or evaluation. Okay, so it's just getting ideas out there without worrying about what other people say. You can get the bad ideas out later. So you either need to have a sufficient number of recorders to write down all ideas, or you can place flip charts around by different topics and have people just roam around the room and write the feedback on them. Again, you sort through the ideas later to determine which ones are good and what is bad. That's in the prioritization phase. You can also do small group breakouts. They can help reduce the size of a large room to a number that allows for open communication. If you have too many people in a room, especially the quieter folks will tend not to talk, but in much smaller groups, it tends to draw people out much more. Each of those groups will need to have its own recorder and a spokesperson so that you can come back together and synthesize. Another alternative is role-playing scenarios. By speaking from different viewpoints in the community or switching perspectives, it can help you consider and work through potential objectives. And we're actually going to practice this as part of the workshop in a session later today. Or since you're viewing this online, we'll at least give you the tools that you can practice it in your own workshop. Okay, another activity that you can use for generating ideas is the 6 thinking hats. This was developed by Edward de Bono in a book that had the same title. And the idea is that you try to think through ideas from various perspectives. There's a blue hat that is all thinking about the process. How can we best plan for the action? What's our steps in getting there? The green hat, it deals with just creative solutions and possibilities. Okay. Um, the white hat is going to be dealing with just facts. It's information, data, it's neutral. It's looking at, yeah, how do I know? What do I need to find out? What additional information do I need here? The red hat is all about feelings. What's my feelings on that? Reason, your feelings can change. No reasons can given. It's gut instinct, so it's just a lot of reaction that's happening there. Uh, Yellow hat is looking at benefits. What are the positives? Okay, why is the idea useful? So this person they're always they're gonna be seeing all the good aspects. And the black hat is going to be cautions. So difficulties, weaknesses, dangers, risks. Why this isn't going to work out. Okay. So you can do this in 2 different ways. You have these 6 different perspectives, but you can have the whole group take and say, all right, we're going to think about this problem in terms of the blue hat. And everybody does that at the same time, and you get ideas, and then you switch to the next one. Or you can distribute these hats. You don't have to use actual hats. You can just use color-coded cards or something of that nature. But you can have individuals throughout the group use these different hats to bring a unique perspective. So while you're thinking about it in the conversation, you role play. And obviously, this is something that you can do if some people tend to have strengths in these different areas. You can allow them to say, okay, you're going to be designated as the green hat person. So again, you don't need an actual hat, but this is the overall process of thinking through a potential project. There are also several different tools that you can use for increasing participation. One of these tools that we've mentioned briefly is the parking lot. Okay, this is simply a way to recognize that the meeting has gone off track and to provide the opportunity to document the sidetrack for follow-up at a later time. So what you need to do, if you notice this is going off on a tangent, but it's not in your meeting purpose and objectives, you just pause the meeting long enough to document whatever that concern is and that issue, and you actually have it recorded in the meeting minutes for a later meeting, or if time permits, you can return to that issue later in the meeting. But the parking lot allows that to be to capture the thought that this is a valuable thought, and we will return to it. It can be a physical parking lot, as it's shown here in the slide, where you're putting up post-it notes there to attend to at a later time. You can also do this by, if you have many tables, you can leave out papers on the table where people can voice concerns or issues that can be followed up later. Um, or it can just be captured verbally and again captured in the meeting minutes. But having it be in the meeting minutes is very important for making sure that it's attended to and people don't feel like they're being passed over. You can also maintain a running speakers list. Again, we talked about raising a single finger and the facilitator saying, yes, I see you and I see you and you'll be up next. Okay. And so this helps retain order while providing opportunities for everyone to speak. You can also provide time limits or limit the number of opportunities to speak if need be. So, for instance, if you only have a limited amount of time, but you know you have some people that are real talkers, you may say, well, everyone will get 3 opportunities to speak or something of that nature. And finally, you can utilize a speaker ball or pass the microphone to help people from talking over each other. So again, all these tools are looking at increasing participation and making sure that all the voices are heard and being involved. When it comes to making decisions in a meeting, you need to have a clear idea of what level of agreement is necessary and how to achieve it. This may depend on the nature of the decision and the passion of the participants. If you can't build a group consensus but need an immediate decision, a simple majority vote may suffice. But oftentimes you want to have total consensus on a decision. It's also important to note that sometimes the goal is not making a decision, but simply receiving input and feedback. You may want this to be the end goal if there's a lot of diverse views and you need the discussion to better help understand viewpoints for a later decision. Finally, the objective may be to prioritize the actions and determine their relative importance, innovativeness, feasibility, schedule, or other factors. So, understanding what type of decision you need and or adjusting based on the tone of the audience is very important. If you're looking to prioritize, then you can use, for instance, the thumbs spectrum or spectrum lines, as covered in the introduction, to help you get some immediate feedback. Uh, you might also consider a dot voting system. So in this system, participants generate ideas and then they group them into clusters or themes. And then finally, they use the dots to distribute votes for preferred solutions. So you might give everyone 3 dots and they can put them all on one topic or they can distribute it on 3. You can also color code the dots. So this doesn't work for everything. If you're going to use dot voting, you want to be sure to check that it's used more of a discussion and exploration tool rather than a decision-making tool, because there can be biases in how people respond, and you may miss valuable feedback if it's used more of a decision-making rather than an exploration tool. You want to ensure that votes are not split amongst too many similar items. That is, make sure you pay attention to your groupings of like things and you count categories together. You also need to be aware, but sometimes there are items that are non-negotiable or systems in which all the elements are required for them to work properly, and so you can't use a prioritization schemes on this type of issue. You also want to be aware of cause and effect relationships between items. Um, Again, we notice the colors, but you can use those to highlight different perspectives. So maybe you want to use one color to say, this is what I think is the most innovative, this is the most feasible, this is the most important, and that way you can see how those overlap with one another. If you really need some formalized feedback, you can actually use paper ballots to score out using a similar way as these dot voting systems, but it's more concrete and structured. So that takes a little bit of advanced preparation, but again, it gives you more formalized input on decision making. Another idea is the plus minus interesting chart. It's also just known as a PMI chart. So in this chart, you simply write down, you have a main idea of a theme, and then you have a list that says the pros and the cons of each alternatives, as well as any important but just neutral facts. So you can use this to begin to systematize, okay, for this option, we have these pluses, these minuses, and then you can come back and weigh in which alternative do we want to go with during this meeting. This, again, can help clarify the thoughts around different alternatives. Another tool for prioritization is the 2-4-8 consensus. So this tool is for generating ideas as well as prioritizing them. And in this activity, you start in pairs, generating ideas, and then you combine into larger and larger groups to promote only the top ideas. So again, you have everybody divide up into pairs, and you're going to have them agree on their top three priorities. So they're going to come up with three ideas that they think are the best, and you might give them 3 minutes to do this. All right, then you're going to stop and you're going to say, all right, each group of two, we want you to combine with another group of two. And so now you, as a group of four, we want you to share your ideas and come up with a joint top three. Take about 4 minutes to do that. Now you're going to combine the groups of four into groups of eight, and you're going to have them do the same process, agree on their top three. So they're going to share, and they're going to come to agreement. That should probably take 5 minutes. Again, we're giving a little more time because there's more people, and you can either repeat this until you're together with the whole group, or in which you get report outs from these different teams, and it's sufficiently reduced for your purposes. So you've got ideas that are being generated and they're being prioritized during the meeting itself in a fun social activity. Some other tools that are helpful for prioritization include the urgent important grid as well as the how now wow grid. Okay. The urgent important matrix is also known as the Eisenhower matrix, and it helps to sort tasks by importance and urgency. So you can see importance is on the vertical axis here, and urgency is on the horizontal axis. So items that are the most critical are going to be that number one box. Those are the ones that you do. They're very important and they're very urgent. Those that are important but not urgent would be in the planning box, and this is where you would schedule long-term planning to make sure that you address those. Those items that are urgent but not really important, you may seek if you can delegate those, or if it's not important and it's not urgent, you may just eliminate those tasks because they take up a lot of time but they don't really accomplish much. On the how now wow matrix, it looks at feasibility versus originality. Um, because oftentimes in meetings, the most creative ideas get bypassed. There's a lot of originality in the brainstorming, but then when it gets to what you actually do, people oftentimes stick with what they know. It's easy, it's familiar, but it's boring. Okay, so this matrix helps prioritize that wow factor. All right, and you can see on the left side, you have feasibility from easy to hard, and you have originality from low originality to high on the right. So the now is things that are easy, but they're not very original. The how is things that are they may be very original, but you think, how are we ever going to do that? They may be some type of long-term goals, but it's just not feasible right now. But the wow says, hey, this is feasible, and it's very original, and so maybe we should prioritize this item. You can actually use stickers in ranking these out. So you can combine this with your dot voting system, and you can tag things with yellow, green, or blue to recognize how, now, or wow. Or you can do the do, plan, delegate, eliminate. You can do the same thing by tagging these with these various areas. These are some ideas that you can use in prioritization depending on what you're needing out of that prioritization process. Okay, now we want to move on from the meeting execution to a specific aspect of the meeting, which is how to deal with disruptive behaviors. First, it's helpful to be aware of the difference between a position statement and a statement of concern of interest. Okay, when disagreements are causing the progress in the meeting to halt, you need to tune your ears to understand whether someone is stating a position or they're stating a value, or that could be a concern or an interest. A position will include an underlying concerns or interests that need to be probed. For instance, if someone may insist that development should move forward in spite of these environmental concerns, but probing that position, you might be able to identify values such as job creation, increased tax revenue, and enhanced quality of life. When values, concerns, or areas of importance are stated, discussion can then turn to methods of compromise or solutions that address all of the concerns. That is, in this instance, you could have job creation, increased tax revenue, enhanced quality of life, as well as the environmental concerns. So sometimes, though, it's not the positions that caused conflicts, but the personalities. And so we want to probe what are some ways that we could deal with the personality and not the issue? If you start noticing some disruptive behaviors in your meeting, you might discreetly pull up this bookmark site on your phone and find a quick guide to how to deal with disruptive behaviors. The NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has created this helpful and hilarious app that uses sea creatures to categorize different behaviors. As you look at this list, can you think of some of the people in various meetings that fit these characterizations? You have a talkative blowfish, an arrogant sea lion, a complaining crab, an eager sea otter, an argumentative jellyfish, a shy clammy, diverting dolphin, indecisive octopus, an apathetic flounder, and a dominating shark. We'd ask you to go ahead and take a moment. You could pause this video and pull this up. Now, you can click on the different icons and we'll describe the behaviors for each one of these characters and suggest gentle or firm interventions. So here we see the example of the shark. The shark is aggressive and focused on the efficiency of the task. And so you can, if you're being gentle, you can be firm but not threatening. And you can say, Sharky, I can tell you care deeply about this topic. I would like to capture what you've said in the parking lot and then hear what others have said. Let's use a round robin to hear from others. And please save your next idea for the next round. This is an option of how you can move the meeting forward, someone that's having this dominating discussion, aggressive behavior. Now, the trick, if you're in an actual meeting, is you would have these characters going through your mind and you want to say Sharky Sharky in the middle of the meeting, but you don't want to do that. But we would like to practice by actually doing exactly that. Um, we can't practice with you because this is via video, but try this out in your own meeting. Have people pick a different secret persona, and one person will act as the facilitator, and you can have a discussion topic, and three other individuals will act out their characters. And the facilitator will continue to ask questions and actively listen, trying to gauge people on the topic. And when the meanwhile, the people are acting out their characters or persona. And then when the facilitator thinks they have everyone figured out, they want to propose a way to overcome the disruptions by calling out the sea creatures' names. Again, that's something you normally would not do, and then suggesting a way that they can move forward. So once they've done that, if people have correctly named that, then you reveal your identities and you switch roles. Again, this is a way to help you improve your meeting facilitation skills while having a little bit of fun and interaction and going through the process with people in an easy, approachable way. Okay, in the final portion of this meeting, we want to touch on how you follow up after a meeting is completed or at the end of the meeting. According to a Harvard Business Review article, Steve Jobs, which is one of the more well-known entrepreneurs in America, he had two essential post-meeting tasks. Okay, he insisted that every item on a meeting agenda had a designated person responsible for that task, and any follow-up work that happened. So this is called the DRI, the directly responsible individual. And the idea is that they were publicly accountable and they would assure that a project or task would actually get done. And he set clear, organized instructions for his team members to follow. Okay, so what you need in order to make that happen is you need meeting notes or minutes, and you need to follow up on commitments. So in the meeting itself, you designated who is the responsible person, and that's going to take a little bit of extra time. Then that's written down in the notes or the minutes, and then there is follow up periodically with those people to make sure that those tasks are being moved along. The meeting notes and meeting minutes do not need to be a direct transcription of the meeting unless that's required for some open meeting laws. Okay, usually this can be done in a single page of highlights. Again, this is bullet points, not transcriptions, and it's something that you want to get out to the meeting members typically in 24 hours so that they can review, add their comments or revisions, and then that can be ready to approve at the next meeting. In the contents, you want to have just a list of the attendees, the key points on each discussion topic, with the discussions, just brief, again, bullet points of that, differing views that are there, and any parking lot items as well. You also want to have a list of specific actions to be taken by whom and when. Again, that directly responsible individual. And finally, you want to have the next meeting date. It is essential to keep following up on the action items to make sure that there is progress. Particularly when your meeting is a workshop, a community forum, or a focus group, or some other like event type meeting. You want to receive feedback on the meeting for future events. Okay, so this portion of an evaluation comes from the NOAA guideline. Uh, you can see here, you're asking questions. Was this a valuable use of a time? And then you're giving a spectrum from strongly disagree to strongly agree. The purpose of the workshop is clear. Right length of time. So a particularly good question to ask is, what was your knowledge before the meeting? What was your knowledge after the meeting? So you can see how people have grown and how it was beneficial to them. Again, some other questions. Do you feel like your contribution was valued? Was the format effective? Um, what about the location of the meeting or the way that it was facilitated, the materials? What'd you like best or least? Again, you can conduct the evaluation at the end of the meeting, or you can send an email follow-up or an online survey within 24 hours. Of course, if you don't do the evaluation in the meeting itself, your response will typically be a lot less. So, as a wrap up, please send us some comments. Write your most valuable takeaways, maybe in an email or approach us on our website and send us any questions that you might have of how you either use this or how you might apply it or ways that you can improve your meetings. And we thank you for your time.